Who ends a marriage with a PDF? That's what I asked myself when I opened my inbox that morning. Somewhere in the middle of a desert, dust in the air, radio chatter in my ears, 4 months into deployment. The subject line said, "Let's be adults about this." The attachment? Divorce papers. Just like that. My name's Nathan. I'm 42, Staff Sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I've served for most of my adult life. Iraq, Afghanistan, all the usual stations. But nothing, absolutely nothing in all those years prepared me for that moment. No gunfire, no IED, just a clean, cold email. 3 sentences. She'd already filed. She'd already emptied our joint account. She'd already moved her new boyfriend into our house back in Spokane. Becky, my wife of 13 years. I read it twice. My hands didn't shake. I didn't scream. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I just closed the lid, walked out of the communications tent, headed to the showers. The water was cold that day. Or maybe it was just me. Back at my bunk, I typed a 1-word reply. Understood. That was all I could manage. Not because I didn't have more to say, but because saying anything felt pointless. She was gone. She'd made that clear. And I wasn't about to beg. Wilson, the guy in the bunk next to mine, looked up from his paperback when I came in. "You good?" he asked casually. "Yeah," I said. "Just stuff back home." He nodded and went back to his book. In the military, we learn to leave things alone, especially the things that cut too deep to talk about. But the truth? I wasn't shocked. Not completely. 6 months before I shipped out, things had started changing. Becky became distant, subtle at first, fewer questions about my day, less laughter. Then came the late shifts at the dental office, the new gym routine she never seemed to sweat from, the unfamiliar names in her stories, the passwords changed on her phone. Still, I didn't snoop. That's not who I am. I was raised to trust, to give people space, but I'm not a fool either, so I made quiet moves of my own. I rented a storage unit across town and placed everything that mattered to me inside. My birth certificate, the title to the house, which, thanks to a VA loan, was under my name, my grandfather's watch, my mother's silver bracelet. I also opened a separate bank account and began funneling a small portion of my pay into it. Not enough to raise suspicion, but enough that, if things went south, I wouldn't be left empty-handed. When she hugged me at the airport before my flight, I noticed her eyes were dry. She said, "Stay safe, okay?" Like she was seeing off a colleague, not her husband. I should have known then, but I didn't want to believe it. Love makes you stubborn, or maybe just blind. 2 weeks after that email, I got another notification. A withdrawal, $88,500. I opened the app. Our joint account had $22.37 left. Our savings, the money we'd built up over a decade, was gone. I didn't even curse. I just set my fork down in the mess hall, stared into space. Murphy from my unit glanced over. "Bad news?" "Just bank stuff," I said. That night, I called. The bank from the base phone center. The woman on the other end confirmed what I already suspected. The money had been moved in waves, small transfers, slowly increasing. The largest ones began the day after I deployed. Classic timing. After the call, I stood outside, watching the other guys video chat with their wives, their kids. I just stood there, silent, watching lives still intact, while mine had already burned down. That was when I remembered. Becky had probably forgotten about the home security system. I still had remote access. Back at my bunk, I logged in. Leave. Footage came up. A strange truck in the driveway. A man I'd never seen before, walking my dog, sipping coffee from my favorite mug, wearing my Seahawks hoodie. And inside the house, the kitchen I'd remodeled during my last leave. Becky was there, laughing. Something in me shifted. Not rage, not heartbreak. Something colder, sharper. I closed the laptop and picked up my notebook. I started writing. Names, contacts, Details. James, army buddy turned lawyer. Bank officer I'd once helped during a fraud investigation training. Terms of my VA loan. Security on my pension. I didn't need confrontation. I needed clarity. This wasn't about yelling or slamming doors. This was about building a plan. I never start fights, but I finish them. I didn't come home with a grand plan. I came home quiet. 2 months after that email, I was back on US soil. I didn't tell Becky. I didn't tell anyone. I landed, rented a car under a different name, checked into a small motel off I-90, the kind with flickering lights and thin walls, where no one asks questions. From there, I started moving. First, I called James, the one person who knew a bit of the story. He was waiting for me at a diner 20 miles outside Spokane. It was one of those places where the coffee is weak but hot, and the waitresses call you Hon without meaning anything by it. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth. "Feel like it too," I replied. He handed me a folder, neat, organized, clipped at the corner. Everything you asked for. I flipped it open. There it was. A refinance application on our house, signed with my name. Only it wasn't my signature. The loop on the N was off. The middle initial was wrong. Whoever had forged it hadn't practiced enough. "She took out $330,000, James said. "Use the equity in the house. VA loan or not, your signature is required." She faked it. I didn't speak. I just stared at the page. "Jeremy's listed as a co-applicant," James added. "Guy's got 2 DUIs and a fraud charge from a few years back. So, she forges my name, pulls cash out of the house, drains our accounts, files for divorce while I'm overseas, and then moves this clown into my house. Busy woman," James said dryly. I gave a quiet laugh, the kind that doesn't come from humor. "It gets better," he continued, sliding a second paper toward me. "She's been in contact with a guy named Daniel Spencer, real estate agent, specializes in cash offers, fast sales, and he's done business with Jeremy before." "So they're selling the house," I said slowly. "Not yet, but they're preparing. Earnest money's already been transferred to Spencer's account. And she has no idea I'm back." "Nope." I leaned back, staring out the window. Snow was starting to fall, the light, dry kind that never sticks. "She's not just betraying me," I murmured. "She's trying to erase me." James nodded. "It's more than personal, Nate. It's calculated." That was the word that kept echoing. Calculated. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This was a blueprint. That night, I logged back into our home security system. The cameras had been rolling the whole time. Jeremy was there, again, standing in the kitchen like he owned it, drinking from the glass I bought in Savannah, petting my dog. Spencer showed up later. They walked through the house together, took notes, photographed the living room, talked about square footage, listing prices. I recorded everything, saved every frame. Then I called the bank that had processed the refinance. I made an appointment with the loan officer. I brought my military, ID, my license, my real signature. I showed him the forged document. His face went pale. "I'll have to report this," he said quietly. "I understand. I already filed a police report." The next day, Becky texted, "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy said someone was asking questions. I didn't reply. Then came the call. I let it go to voicemail. "Nathan, we need to talk. The bank is saying something about fraud. Jeremy got pulled over in your truck. What's going on?" Her voice cracked a little. That night, James called. "They froze the refinance funds. But listen, there's more." I waited. "Jeremy had your truck. Got pulled over for driving on a suspended license. They impounded it." "Good," I said. "They also found prescription pads from the dental office Becky works at. Not blank." I closed my eyes. "She's stealing prescription pads now. Looks that way. Cops are investigating." I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the stained carpet. The room smelled like old coffee and disappointment. This was getting bigger than I thought. Part of me wanted to call Becky, warn her. Old reflexes, I guess. But I didn't. I remembered that camera feed, the man in my hoodie, the house I paid for, the life I built, taken, repainted, renamed. That was the moment the last thread snapped. The next morning, I met with the bank's fraud investigator. Name was Thompson. Older guy, weary eyes, coffee stain on his tie. "This happens more than you think," he muttered, flipping through documents. "Spouse gets deployed. Other one sees an opportunity." "How much is gone?" I asked. He hesitated. 14,600. Transferred to Daniel Spencer. Not Jeremy. Someone else. My jaw tightened. Who is he exactly? Real estate agent, but with ties to Jeremy. They've worked together before. You might want your lawyer to subpoena records. I stepped outside and called James. "Daniel Spencer," I said. "We need to look deeper." An hour later, he called me back. "Spencer's a cash quick flipper. Works in tandem with Jeremy. 3 previous deals, all military families, all during deployments, all sold under market. So this is a pattern. Looks that way." That was the moment the story changed. It wasn't just Becky anymore. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was a scheme, a system. And I wasn't the only one. When you're trained for combat, they teach you not to flinch. Not from the noise, not from the blood, not even from the silence that comes right after. But they don't teach you how to handle betrayal when it's wearing your wedding band. Wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even surprised. What I felt was focus, a cold, surgical kind of clarity that reminded me of prepping gear before a jump. Every detail mattered. Every step had to be precise. The FBI stepped in soon after James shared what we'd uncovered. Turned out, they'd already been sniffing around Jeremy and Spencer for months. But until now, they lacked the connective tissue, something to tie the scam together. My story became the thread they needed. I met with 2 agents at their field office, Agent Patel and Agent Donovan. Both were polite, measured. They didn't ask how I was doing. I appreciated that. "This helps establish a pattern," Patel said, flipping through my signed statements, screen captures, and bank reports. "Intent, organization, not just individual, mistakes, a conspiracy." They asked about Becky. I didn't have answers. Did she know the whole plan? Was she being manipulated? Or did she see the opportunity and decide to run with it? "I don't know," I said. But she didn't flinch. When she left me with nothing, they made a note of that. I was back at the motel that night, eating takeout on a plastic tray when another message came in. "Becky, again. We need to talk, please. I'm not sure what's going on, but things are spiraling." I didn't reply. Then, another one. "Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow morning. Just talk to me, Nathan." I didn't plan to meet her, but I wanted to know what she was doing while she thought I would. At 9:30 a.m., James and I parked across the street from our old house, my house. At 9:45, Becky came out, got into her car and drove off, toward the park. 10 minutes later, a different car pulled up. A white SUV with a real estate logo on the door. Daniel Spencer. Jeremy came outside to greet him. They shook hands, like they'd done this dance before. Then they went inside. James turned to me. "Do we follow them?" I shook my head. No need. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the security app. Interior and exterior cameras, all streaming live to the cloud. Installed a year ago, when a neighbour's home got broken into. Becky had forgotten. The screen showed them in the living room. Spencer was snapping pictures. Jeremy was pointing out features. The bay window, the fireplace, the crown moulding I'd installed with my own 2 hands. I turned up the volume. "We should list by the end of the week," Spencer said. "Got a buyer already lined up. Cash offer, of course." "How much?" Jeremy asked. "List at $470. They'll offer $420. Everyone walks away happy." "What about the husband?" Jeremy asked. Becky says he's causing trouble. Spencer waved the concern off like it was a fly. Military guys are all the same. They make some noise, threaten lawyers. But between deployments and pride, they always cave. Trust me, he'll take a settlement just to make it go away. I looked over at James. You getting this? He was already recording the feed on his phone. I forwarded the footage to Agent Patel. Just 2 words in the message. Happening now. 30 minutes later, I watched from down the block as FBI agents surrounded the house. Unmarked cars, suits with earpieces, the whole show. Jeremy and Spencer came out in cuffs. That's when Becky pulled up. She didn't even get out of the car at first, just sat there, frozen, staring at the house, the same one she tried to steal. Then she stepped out, hands over, her mouth eyes wide. Patel called me a few minutes later. We got them on tape, she said. Everything. Wire fraud, real estate fraud, conspiracy. What about Becky? I asked. We're still determining her level of involvement, she replied carefully. She's distressed. I watched her from the car. She wasn't crying. Not yet. But she looked like a woman who just realized the house of cards she'd built was already ash and wind. That night, I sat in the motel parking lot. The air was cold, crisp. Stars overhead, windshield fogging with each breath. Becky texted again. I didn't know they were using me. I swear, Nathan, I just thought you were hiding money from me. Jeremy said you'd been planning to leave me. That you had someone else. That you moved your money because you were done with us. The message ended there. 3 dots appeared on the screen like she was still typing. Then they vanished. I stared at the text for a long time, not because I was tempted to answer, but because I was finally certain of something I hadn't allowed myself to admit. She had never once asked if it was true. Not why I moved the money, not why I opened a second account, not why I acted cautious before deployment. She just assumed the worst and let herself fall into the arms of someone who confirmed it. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always come from hatred. Sometimes it comes from convenience, from cowardice, from choosing the easiest story to believe, the one that justifies everything you're about to do. The next morning, James met me over breakfast. He brought fresh copies of the security footage and a document the FBI had just approved for release. She's officially part of the conspiracy investigation, he said, sliding the folder across the table. Not as a primary target. Not yet. But her fingerprints are showing up on more than just the refinance paperwork. I flipped through the contents. Email threads, timelines, cross-checked financial data. She was in deeper than she admitted, I said. He nodded. But here's the thing. She's trying to separate herself from them now. The moment Spencer and Jeremy went down, she started spinning a new version of the story. Victim? I asked. Yep. Scared housewife manipulated by her. Charismatic boyfriend. Right again. I stared into my coffee for a moment, then asked, can we freeze her civil rights to the house while this plays out? We already have. Judge signed the order this morning. Until the criminal investigation is resolved, she can't touch a thing. That night, another message came through, shorter this time. Nathan, whatever you're doing, please stop. I'm scared. Jeremy's arrested. Daniel too. They're trying to drag me into it, and I don't know what to say. This one, it almost sounded real, like her voice had finally cracked through the layers of justification. But I couldn't feel sorry for her anymore. I remembered the kitchen footage, the laughter, the way she stood next to Jeremy in my house, pointing out my work like it was hers. I remembered sitting on the edge of a bunk, half a world away, reading 3 cold sentences that ended 13 years of marriage. I remembered silence. And now, it was her turn to sit in it. The thing about betrayal is, once you survive the first sting, everything after that feels quieter. Not painless, just numb. Like your body understands there's no use bleeding anymore. That morning, I watched the news with the volume turned down low. 2 Spokane men arrested in real estate fraud scheme. The headline read. Jeremy's mugshot was on the screen. Tired eyes, defiant mouth. Spencer looked worse, pale, sweating through his collar. Becky wasn't mentioned. Not yet. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, coffee in one hand, folder in the other. James had delivered more documents. Mortgage statements, financial records, the forged loan application. A complete paper trail. She's still technically not under arrest, James said. But the walls are closing in. Fast. I nodded. She's reaching out more, I said. Let her, he replied. Let her feel the panic. It's not time to talk. Not yet. Later that day, I visited the county clerk's office, filed a fraud contestation on the refinance, registered a formal restriction on any sale or transfer of the property without my in-person consent. The clerk, a tired man with round glasses, asked if I wanted to notify the other party. No, I said. They'll find out soon enough. Back at the motel, I logged into the security feed again. The house was quiet. Jeremy's truck was gone. Becky's car sat in the driveway. She hadn't left all day. Then, just after 7 p.m., her number lit up my screen. Again. Nathan, please, we need to talk. I didn't know about the forgery. Jeremy told me it was legal, that the bank approved everything. Still, I said nothing. I had spent over a decade believing that silence in marriage was a symptom of strain. Now I knew it could also be a weapon. The next day, James received a call from a contact in the mortgage department. There's more, he told me. Turns out, Becky had reached out about refinancing again. Different lender. She was trying to move fast, probably before the fraud report kicked in. She's scared, I said. Good. But it also means she's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. That same evening, I logged into the home system again. Motion in the backyard. Becky, pacing with her phone, talking to someone. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I didn't need to. She was unraveling. I wrote a short message to Agent Patel. House under surveillance. She may be preparing to move assets or destroy documents. Be advised. Less than an hour later, Patel called. We're freezing her accounts preemptively, she said, based on probable cause. I didn't smile. Not exactly, but I breathed a little deeper. Later that night, James asked me a question I hadn't considered. What do you want from her, Nate? Really? If you had her sitting across the table right now, what would you say? I thought about that for a long time. I don't think I need to say anything, I replied. She's already hearing everything she never expected in the silence. Then what's your endgame? I took a breath. She walks away with nothing. Not a cent. No claim to the house. No access to the pension. No second chance. I want her to feel what I felt, waking up in that desert, realizing everything was gone and no one was coming to fix it. James nodded slowly. I think we're almost there. 2 days later, the call came in. FBI was formally charging Jeremy and Spencer with conspiracy, wire fraud, and identity theft. Becky was still being interviewed, but her name was showing up on more and more communications. She had told them Jeremy was the mastermind. Maybe she's telling the truth, Patel said over the phone. Or maybe she's hoping to look like another victim. But she forged my name, I reminded her. And that, Mr. Briggs, is why she's not walking away from this clean. That evening, Becky called again. I let it go to voicemail. She sounded smaller. Nathan, I know, you probably hate me, and I deserve it, but this isn't who I am. I didn't mean to ruin everything. That was the thing. She didn't ruin everything. I was still here. Still standing. Still fighting. Only this time, with the law at my back instead of a rifle. Later that night, I walked down to the creek, near the motel. Just needed air, quiet, time to think. There's a moment in every operation, right before the breach, right before you kick in the door, where your heart slows down. Not from fear, from control, from purpose. That's where I was now. The chaos was behind me. The reckoning was in motion, but something darker still waited just ahead. A final piece. One more truth I hadn't told anyone, not even James. Because while everyone was focused on Jeremy and Spencer, I had discovered one more name, and it changed everything. The first time I ever jumped out of a plane, I wasn't afraid of falling. I was afraid of missing, of landing in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with no plan. That's how betrayal felt too. At first, like free fall, but with no idea where you'd hit. But now I had a plan, and I knew exactly where I was going to land. It started with a quiet meeting at the bank, the one that issued the refinance. I walked in, dressed in civvies, calm. I asked to speak to the loan officer who had processed the documents. He recognized me instantly. "You're Nathan Briggs." I nodded. "Yes, the actual Nathan Briggs, not the signature you received." I placed my military ID and driver's license on the desk. Then I pulled out the forged application. The loop in the G was off. The date of birth was correct, but the handwriting, stiff, cautious, not mine. "I never signed this," I said. He swallowed hard. "I'll need to escalate this immediately." "I already have," I said, standing. "The FBI will be in touch." From there, things moved quickly. The bank froze the refinance, account again, this time permanently. But the real movement came when James handed me a folder with a new name inside. Daniel Spencer hadn't been acting alone. Turns out, the cash buyer for our home had a familiar last name. Spencer's cousin. A fake LLC created 6 months ago. No website, no employees. Just a shell. "So they weren't just trying to sell the house," I said, flipping through the documents. "They were trying to sell it to themselves." "Classic wash sale," James confirmed. "Lowball the value, move it into their control, flip it later and pocket the full margin. Tax-free, under the radar." "And Becky?" I asked. He looked up. "Her name appears nowhere in the paperwork, which is interesting." "She's hiding," I said. "Or being hidden." James nodded. "You ready to expose it?" I didn't answer. I just opened my laptop and began uploading every document, every screenshot, every video file to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I included the camera footage from the day Jeremy and Spencer toured the house, the transcripts from the refinance, and a short message. "The structure is collapsing. Check Spencer's shell company." Within 48 hours, I got a call from Agent Patel. "You were right," she said. "It was a full pipeline. Spencer would sell under market to himself through a shell. Jeremy would pocket a consultant fee, and in some cases, so would the spouse, including mine." "Too early to say." I could hear her hesitate. "But it's looking more like she was involved than not." That evening, Becky finally stopped texting. She called. I didn't answer, but I let it go to voicemail. "Nathan, I know you've seen the news. I know what's happening, but you don't understand. Jeremy lied to me too. He said it was all legal, that you'd left me, that you weren't coming back." I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the blinking red light of the recorder. She was spinning, losing control, and I was just getting started. The next morning, James and I went back to the county courthouse, filed an emergency motion to have Becky legally removed from the deed due to forged documentation and financial abuse during deployment. It was bold, but legal, especially under the Service Members' Civil Relief Act, protections most civilians forget exist. "She forged your signature," the clerk said, looking through the packet. "That alone may be enough. Combine that with a coordinated fraud ring targeting active duty military," James added. The clerk gave a slow nod. "We'll push it through." By the time we left, Becky had lost any legal claim to the property. Later, that day, Patel called again. "We've got full surveillance authorization, phone records, emails. Spencer and Jeremy are flipping, giving us everything. And Becky, she's lawyered up. But we know now, she requested the refinance quote a month before you deployed. She was in from the start." I said nothing, for a moment. Just sat there, staring at the rain sliding down the motel window. I thought maybe she got pulled into it, I said quietly. I thought maybe she got manipulated. Patel's voice was steady. She's not the mastermind, but she knew what she was doing, and when it started falling apart, she doubled down. I ended the call. And then I drove back to the house, my house. It was empty now, Jeremy in custody, Becky likely with her attorney. I parked down the block, walked up the driveway I used to shovel every December, walked past the porch I rebuilt the summer before Afghanistan. I had the keys. I still owned it. Legally. Officially. I stepped inside. Silence. Boxes. Trash bags. A few photos still on the walls, most of them turned down or cracked at the edges. I walked through the rooms, one by one, not looking for memories, just confirming something. This place didn't feel like home anymore. Becky hadn't just broken trust, she'd desecrated it. I stood in the kitchen, hands on the counter. I installed myself, remembering her laugh from a year ago, right here, pouring wine, calling me her soldier. That was before the silence, before the lies, before the betrayal. Now, all I heard was my own breath, and the sound of everything she tried to steal, slipping right through her fingers. The house was hollow now, not empty, just stripped of meaning. Furniture still stood, curtains still hung. But the soul of it, the part I'd built, the part I'd fought for, was long gone. And yet I stood there, not in grief, in resolve. I wasn't here for closure. I was here to end something. An hour after I left the house, Agent Patel called. They cracked, she said. Jeremy and Spencer both. I didn't speak, just listened. They've given us names, paper trails, 3 states, 12 victims, all military families, all while the spouse was deployed. Becky's name shows up in 5 separate communications, not by accident. That moment sat heavy in my chest. I had known. Deep down, I had known. She wasn't used, I said. She helped them. Patel's voice softened. The DA is preparing conspiracy charges. But there's something else. I waited. Daniel Spencer kept a private email account, separate from his company. Jeremy used it to send Becky the forged loan template. Becky responded with a scan of your signature, taken from a previous tax document. She initiated the fraud. There it was, the final piece. It wasn't Jeremy. It wasn't manipulation. Becky did this. I thanked Patel and ended the call. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I opened the motel drawer, took out the envelope I'd kept there, the one with our wedding photo inside. 13 years. I looked younger in that picture, not just in the face, in the eyes. Back then, I still believed love was armor, something that kept the world from getting too close. Now, I knew better. Love, real love, is supposed to be earned every day. She stopped earning it a long time ago. The next morning, Becky's attorney reached out to James. She wanted to negotiate. She's scared, James told me. She thinks if she gives up the house, the money, the pension, you might not press charges. What do you think? I asked. I think she knows it's over. I nodded. Good. Make it official. Later that day, James filed a motion accepting the settlement terms, full forfeiture of any claim to the house, surrender of all funds taken from joint accounts, signed affidavit admitting to forgery, waiver of spousal support, immediate divorce finalization with no alimony. In exchange, I wouldn't personally pursue criminal charges. The federal investigation was still ongoing, but from me, she'd get no mercy and no contact. That night, she called. One last time. I let it ring. I let it go to voicemail. Nathan. I signed. It's done. You win. But please believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. She paused. I thought you'd moved on. I thought you were going to leave me, Jeremy said. He said you were hiding money, planning to vanish. Another pause. He lied to me, but I let him. And I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday. You'll believe I didn't mean to become this person. The recording clicked off. I deleted it. Not out of spite, out of peace. She was no longer my story, but my story wasn't over. 3 days later, I was called to testify before a federal grand jury. The prosecutor laid it out clearly. This wasn't just a crime ring. It was a coordinated scheme targeting the most vulnerable moment in a soldier's life: deployment. They used our absence as a weapon, used our trust like currency. But this time, they left a soldier standing when they expected ashes. Jeremy was sentenced to 8 years. Spencer got 12. Both agreed to plea deals. And Becky? She avoided jail time, but the court forced her into public restitution, civil penalties, and permanent financial restrictions. No credit, no refinance, no access to my benefits. She lost everything she tried to steal. 6 months after the settlement, I sold the house. I couldn't stay there. Couldn't look at those walls, those corners, without seeing her fingerprints in the plaster. With the money, I bought a small cabin in Montana. 10 acres. Pines. A creek that sings at night. I took early retirement. 20 years in uniform felt like enough. Now I build furniture for locals. Simple stuff. Tables. Porch swings. Things made to last. Sometimes, when I open the windows and let the wind in, I think about the way silence used to haunt me. Now, it heals me. Last month, I got a letter from a woman in North Carolina. Navy spouse. Same story. Same fraud ring. FBI gave her my name. "You don't know me," she wrote, "but you saved our home. You stood up when everyone else might have walked away. Thank you." I pinned it to my fridge. It reminded me that justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's steady, patient, relentless, like a man in a motel room planning his own rescue. It's strange. The things you miss when everything falls apart. Not the big things, not the house, not the car, not the routine. You miss the quiet sounds, the way a dog's paws tap across a wooden floor, the click of a coffee maker before sunrise, the voice that used to call your name from another room, even when it stopped meaning anything. But you don't miss the lies. You don't miss the silence when it's poisoned. And eventually, you stop missing the person who left it all behind. After the court proceedings ended and the dust finally settled, I packed what little I had left and drove north, far from Spokane, far from reminders. I didn't take much, just what mattered. Scout, my German shepherd, rode shotgun, loyal in ways people aren't. The cabin wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a small porch, a work shed out back. But it was mine, uncomplicated, paid for in full. No one else's name on the deed. No shared accounts. No back doors left open. Out here, the days pass slower. The nights are colder, but they're honest. I chop wood, I fix fences, I build tables and shelves for people who say thank you and mean it. I don't talk about what happened. Not often, not because I'm ashamed, but because some stories live better in silence. Once in a while, James checks in, says the fallout from the fraud ring is still ongoing. More families coming forward, more assets frozen, more accountability. Apparently, my testimony helped build the backbone of the case. "I told you," he said the last time we spoke. "You didn't just protect yourself. You exposed something bigger." I thanked him, and meant it. Truth is, for all the nights I spent in a motel bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd lost everything, what I gained was something harder to name. Self-respect, maybe. Not the kind that comes from revenge, the kind that comes from surviving. A few weeks ago, I got another letter from a guy named Travis, active duty Marine, stationed in Okinawa. Same scheme, different names. His wife had filed for divorce 6 weeks into his deployment. Started moving money 2 weeks before that. Same game, same trap. But this time, she got caught early. Because someone, the bank, the attorney, had flagged the pattern. He wrote, "I read about you. I saw your case in a newsletter for service members. I knew what to look for because you didn't stay quiet. Thank you." I pinned that letter next to the other one, right there on the fridge. And sometimes, on the coldest nights, I sit with Scout on the porch, drink in hand, and I let the past visit me, just for a moment. I remember the desert, the email, the silence that followed. I remember the cold water in the communal showers, the trembling in my fingers that no one saw, the single word I sent back. Understood. I remember the faces. Jeremy, smug behind his sunglasses. Spencer, rattled in his mugshot. Becky, on the lawn, hands over her mouth as everything collapsed around her. And I remember something else, something important. I didn't have to destroy them. I just had to let the truth speak. I never confronted Becky in person, never yelled, never asked her why, because I realized in the end, her answers wouldn't matter. What she did said more than anything she could explain. I heard once that betrayal doesn't change you, it reveals you. I think that's true. Becky didn't ruin me. She revealed me to myself. And what I found wasn't a broken man. It was someone stronger, quieter, more dangerous in stillness than I ever was in uniform. Sometimes people ask if I'd take her back, if things had gone differently, if she had told the truth sooner, if she had stopped before the fraud, if she had said, just once, "I'm sorry," and meant it, and maybe once, the answer would have been complicated. Now, the answer is simple. No, because the man I became, the one who pulled himself out of that wreckage, doesn't belong to her anymore. He never did. He belongs to himself, so I keep building, keep healing. One quiet day at a time, and when the wind moves through the trees just right, when the fire crackles low and Scout lays his head on my boot, I smile. Not because I'm bitter, but because I'm free. This was never about getting. It was about getting back what was mine, my life, my name, my peace, and no one will take that from me again.